In a world where law firms constantly miss out on new leads due to sloppy legal intake, and often because they just aren't answering the phone, two marketers aim to provide a glimmer of hope.
Like, I thought we agreed we weren't going to do the announcer thing.
Thank God, because that hurts my throat. You do the intro.
Gladly. I'm Tony Prieto, and this is my colleague Nick Werker. Believe it or not, we're marketing professionals.
Well, I think you're the professional. But we are true experts when it comes to all matters legal intake.
For over a decade, our company, Answering Legal, has helped ensure that growing law firms never miss out on connecting with new leads.
And now we're ready to share our trade secrets and help make the legal world a better place.
Or at the very least, help our listeners shore up their lead capturing processes and convert more callers to clients.
Welcome to the Legal Intake Experts Podcast.
Let's dive right in.
We are back. I try to outdo myself. I try to escalate. I am I don't know if that's a good tactic or if Joe's going to make me redo that. But we're back once again on the Legal Intake Experts Podcast, presented and owned by Answering Legal. I am Nick Werker, joined as always by my co-host Tony Prieto. Tony, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. One of the fun things about batching this content is that you get to ask me how I'm doing several times. It's just a pleasant sort of hello we get to do, even though we talk to each other all day. What's new with you, Nick?
What is new with me? Katie is entering her third trimester. I'm very excited to be a dad. I'm really not nervous. I'm a little overwhelmed, but I'm really not nervous.
I think you're going to do a good job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do like to ask people how they're doing. I really like to be nice. Sometimes I'm not very good at it, but I really like to be nice. What else is new with me? Do you know what's new with me? I feel like you would know.
Yeah, the other half of your brain. Well, I'll tell you what's new is this episode of this podcast. And on this episode of the podcast, we're going to be doing some real introspection.
Oh, I love introspection. I like introspection for a very strange reason, is because I'm constantly checking to make sure that I'm not crazy, because usually people are making me feel crazy. But you're right. And producer Joe put this together for us. And I think I'm a little too stupid to understand what's going on. So I'm just going to go through this exercise, and then maybe I'll have like an aha moment. But he wants us to do a self-evaluation for us to grade our hosting skills.
All right. So I'll lead off with the first question. All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your ability to make the audience laugh?
How would I rate my ability?
Yeah, your ability.
10 out of 10. I'm the funniest person I know. I don't give myself a lot of credit in a lot of things. I am, for better or for worse, one of the funnier people that I have ever met in my life.
Well, it worked.
I will have a thought. I will have a thought sometimes in the middle of the day and make myself laugh and not say it out loud because it's just crazy. But yeah, I'm hilarious. If you're not laughing, I'm sorry. You must not have a sense of humor. I'm sorry.
I think it does make you laugh. It does make you look crazier if you just laugh at something and then don't explain.
Do you think that doesn't happen to me?
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that the other option is if you just laugh out loud, then you explain the thought of the people around you. They won't think you're as nuts.
I can't.
Anyway, I would rate myself a solid 6. I'm the straight man in every comic scenario that I end up in. The joke is always on me. And I've learned it took me a long time to accept that, right? Because you want to be the person making the joke, not the person on whom the joke is. But it's an important comic role to be the straight man. And I take that role on with honor.
I don't think you give yourself enough credit. You are definitely the straight man, especially in this relationship. And most people who are in a relationship with me have to play the straight man because I am not. But I don't think the joke is on you. I think you're just very good at making me seem even more ridiculous than I am by being the straight man. So I would give you, if I had to rate you on being funny and the ability to make the audience laugh, I would also give you a 10 at the straight man game.
See, this is the problem with the self-evaluation. Let's hit question 2 here, Nick.
All right, I'll ask you. How would you rate? This is bad, bro, because you're gonna, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your on-screen appearance in the video version of this podcast?
So as a sort of behind the scenes. This right here, this is a green screen. It severely limits the number of shirts I can wear. So in my whole arsenal of, I like to wear a nice collared shirt. I like to look nice on camera. I only have a handful of shirts that won't disappear into the background and make me look like a floating head, or have strange designs on them that would just disappear and you'd see the Answering Legal logo appear behind me. So because of that constraint, I always take care to clean myself up before. I would say that my on-screen appearance in the video versions of this podcast would be 7, which is great because if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, that doesn't make a difference. I'm a 10.
I agree. I think your beard looks especially good, though. You trimmed it really good. I know you do it for the podcast, and I did not shave, even though I am only a recent shaver, but I didn't shave. If I had to rate my own on-screen appearance in the podcast, objectively, I would also say around a 7, but it's because I used to like really dressing up a lot, and I used to wear a lot of like button downs. I became more casual because I started taking myself less seriously. And you know this about me. I am a little self-conscious about my teeth. So I try to hide that. And it's just something that I feel is different. And then I also know that my look is a little out there. I wear giant glasses. I rock right now, but a high and tight haircut, as you and your dad like to call it. And I'm just a little, I don't know if I'm not generic. And so I would give myself somewhere around a 7, but I do try to like this t-shirt. I was explaining this to Joe before the podcast. Ooh, I get to plug Costco. I follow an Instagram account that shows you like the current deals and the current things that Costco is selling. And most of the time it's like candy that I don't want to go buy, but they put a post for these t-shirts. They're Peruvian Pima cotton t-shirts, and they're on sale for like $18. And they only have like 3 colors, but they're super cozy. And they like wash really well, and they're soft, and I look like Steve Jobs, I feel really cool in my nice Pima cotton black t-shirt. 7 out of 10 appearance.
Yeah. When this podcast goes big and we get a movie made and we're on the red carpet and they ask you, what are you wearing? You get to say Kirkland Couture.
That's right.
Here's the final question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your performance as a teammate to your co-host?
Oh, really bad. Really objectively bad, because like I talk too much. I lose my train of thought. I talk over you. I don't really like set you up for success. I just kind of come on here and and it's like we know what we're talking about. So if you watch it the full way through, or if Joe is able to like compile a really good YouTube short that's like a minute, you could get some real good stuff. Like I watch this on TikTok. I watch all the podcasts. And if you know us a little bit, it makes sense. But I am not at all a good co-host. No, bad.
Give me a number.
4.
4. Okay. So 5 is an average, right? And so a lot of people don't like to give themselves, and maybe in that case, I should rate my appearance a little bit lower. I am now looking at our numbers, and we skew very high. But I do think that I am a good co-host, because if a podcast is like a fishing trip, you are the fish, and I am the person reeling you in. And so I've not in a bad way, but I think one of the strengths of this sort of dynamic is that you go far ranging out on the topic and I reel us back in on what we're supposed to talk about. And I think that is actually an effective dynamic, because if we were just sticking to the script, this would be really boring and defeat the purpose, right?
We often do not stick to producer Joe's script very much. We should do an episode one time on like legal intake scripting and show how far we go off of our script, because it's just a guideline. But you should have a legal intake script. That's for a separate thing. I tell you what, I'm usually self-deprecating, but I guess I'm feeling pretty confident today. How are you feeling about your rating about yourself? Are you self-deprecating like me, or are you more objective about yourself?
It's really hard to be objective about yourself. I try to always evaluate myself. I'm pretty confident, but I always try to evaluate myself with room to improve, right? I like to think of myself, I'm only 30, but even if were I 60, 90, I would like to think that at that point, I will never have reached a point where I know everything, where I feel like I can no longer learn. My attitude toward life is to be a lifelong student. So here's the problem is that nobody likes to consider, and this is true of like of anything you try to rate, right? Other than maybe a business. You go to a movie, you had a good time, you're coming back, and someone asks you, give that a rating out of 5 stars. No one's going under 3 because
You did it. You got us to where we're supposed to be. I get it.
it's
I
really
told
hard.
you. I get it. Okay, so here's what we're doing. Okay, I don't even have to look. I don't even have to look at the script, dude. Oh, I know what we're doing. We're talking about lawyers and law firm owners evaluating themselves on their intake process and client experience. Is that what we're supposed to be doing?
Exactly.
So I want to talk about this because we're helping law firm owners evaluate their current intake process objectively. What should they be looking at and how to be brutal about it.
One of the things that you do get when you're evaluating something like intake that you can't really do when you're evaluating something like am I funny is there are numbers. You can see how many calls came in. Number one, how many of those did I answer? How many of the ones that I answered became clients? And that right there, those 3 numbers can tell you a lot about an objective value of your intake. Now, it's easy to go, well, that's not my fault. How many of these were good cases, whatever? None of that matters. It's very easy to push blame off of yourself. But if we're being objective, intake is entirely under your control. So any sorts of failures that happen there, bad news is it's your fault. The good news is you can fix it.
I want to talk about Ben. Ben Shatlis is our president of sales. And what he does in his role is after the free trial, he corresponds with our customers and lets them know how many minutes that we expect them to use, what the price that they can expect is. And even though we've done, or I think that Tony and I have done in our objective measure, a good job of educating our customers on how we work, and then the account executive has also helped them set up their account correctly, hopefully. Ben then goes over like the whole thing before they really become a customer and they give a credit card and they pay, right? One of the things that ends up happening in the conversation is because we take messages for you. We know because we set this up when a new client is calling you, when an existing client is calling you, when a judge is calling you, when an insurance agency is calling, when your mom is calling you. We know who it was because we took the message, and there are specific lines that we use with which to send those messages. So it both counts it and stores the message so that we can see it. I think it's for like up to 90 days for security purposes. So don't call me asking me for your messages from 2 years ago. I don't have them. What ends up happening is, say, Tony, you call me, you had 50 calls. What ends up happening is they're like, oh, that price is this and that. And Ben will say, well, we picked you up out of those. I said 50 calls. Out of those 50 calls, we picked you up. Let's say 10% of them were new clients. 5 new clients. We picked up 5 new clients. That's a pretty good return. Those 5 people reaching out to you would not have had an opportunity to speak with you had we not answered the phone. And a lot of the time, the people will say, well, those didn't convert into customers. So this is not, I'm not making money on it. There's no ROI of the service. And whose fault is that?
Right.
You know? So let's talk about that, because you have to reel me back in here. But it always begins with the phones or the initial conversation, right? Because even if they submit a web form, you're going to have a phone call with them. So let's call that the first call. You need a clear understanding of what is happening on the first call, how you're conducting that first call. Like in our last episode, how long it takes you to call that potential new client back, how long it takes you to get back to them after we've answered the phone and maybe scheduled a consultation or whatever we've done for you. Because that interaction sets the tone for everything else that follows.
And this is something we keep coming back to. A couple of episodes ago, we reacted to Ron Latz's LinkedIn, where it was like review your phone calls, track your phone calls, review your phone calls. How many are you getting in? How many of those people? And hopefully your CRM can do that for you, especially if you have something like Answering Legal to provide a link between your CRM and your phone number. But the thing that you can do here, and again, this is what makes this evaluation possible, is you have data. And as long as you let go of your ego and are able to say, okay, maybe I'm screwing up here. Maybe those people who didn't go with me are because of something I can control, right? Then you're able to look at those numbers and say, okay, I picked up 10 phone calls from new clients. I answered those calls. Those, let's say 7 of them represent a viable basis. Only 3 of them went with me. Why? Now, you don't have to secure 100%, but you should be able to see in your CRM, why didn't they go with you? They found another attorney. Well, then maybe you weren't quick enough on the uptake. It wasn't the right fit. Well, maybe something went wrong in your communication with them. Maybe they had better expectations of your communication, etc. Finding out, and this is so funny because we talk about this with Nick all the time for our CRM, is like tracking why people did not hire us is even more important than finding out why they did.
Absolutely, because that's really the only feedback. Because if somebody says like, "Oh, I hired you because you called me, and I heard about you, and I like you, and you said you could fix my case," right, like,
or I hired you because my friend recommended you. Well, unfortunately, you can't have people like you. That's not under your control, right? But the thing that is under your control often is why they didn't hire you.
Yes. So there's a couple of things, and this is sort of a blend of that episode, because Bo Royal talked about this in the post that we went over on his LinkedIn too, is knowing your numbers. And I think it was Ron that said you could check your call answer rate in like CallRail, which I highly recommend you use. I use What Converts. I like What Converts. I like Michael Cooney. I think he's a great guy. But I know CallRail is super popular too. You can see how many of your phone calls were answered and how many were not answered. You can see in there, you can sort by like unique phone call. So you don't have to see like people who called back, whatever. You can see, here's what's really cool. And I have this set up. The way that we do it, and this is a recommendation that I'll make for you, is obviously I have an answering service. The answering service, consider me a business, right? I am in the business of, I get web form inquiries and phone calls from law firm owners who want to use my service. When a law firm owner fills out a form on our website, it goes into our CRM, and someone from our organization calls that person and has a consultation with them and tells them everything about our service, offers them a free trial, which would be the free consultation in your instance, and then they decide whether or not they want to hire us. When they call us, I use What Converts. So What Converts tells me the source of that phone call, who the caller number, did they call from a Google ad? Did they call from organic? Did they call from a bar association that we do business with? Did they call from a Google business profile? We have all that stuff, right? And I have linked that to my CRM, which then runs a check for the answering service message that is integrated to my CRM, which you can do via our many direct integrations to both legal CRMs and non-legal CRMs if you so choose. And it populates all the information. So say Tony, law office of Tony Prieto comes in, I enter all his information to the CRM via the automation that the receptionist took from Answering Legal. So Tony Prieto, 555-315-555-5555, because Miami.
305.
305.
Come on.
Oh, I butchered that, man. I butchered that. Dude, I butchered that. You get the picture. T Prieto at prietolaw.com, all that. And then it says that he found me via the What Converts thing. It's like Google Ads, Answering Legal branded search, because brand, the time of day, the call duration, it has everything. And you have that in one record in your CRM.
Mm-hmm. And if, What Converts records those calls, if you're recording those calls, you might think it's pretty daunting to think, okay, I need to review all of these calls. Where did it go wrong? The advantage is you only have to review the places where it went wrong. You don't need to care about why it went right. I mean, yes, you do have to care about why it went right. That comes after you fix the problems on why it went wrong. And so, you have to identify your weak points before you can identify your strengths. And then you need to shore up your weaknesses and play to your strengths. And I mean, it's just like any other, you can think of it like an athlete, right? They watch their games, they watch the opponent's games to try and identify weaknesses, strengths, and how to play that out. And it's again, it can seem daunting because, okay, I have to run a business, I have to practice the law, I have a life with, a spouse and children and things I like to do for fun. How do I balance it all? But the advantage is that, again, you only have to pay attention to where it went wrong. And so if you get 50 calls and 10% of them, 5 of them are new clients, and you were able to secure 3 of them, that's 2 calls a month that you need to listen to and try and figure out what went wrong. And that's the thing, is you don't have to do it every month. You could do it quarterly, as long as you set up a regular review where you look at what went wrong and you map it out against what happened the previous month or the previous quarter. I wouldn't recommend going any longer than a quarter, in order to see how you're improving, where you aren't improving, how you can shore those things up. And if it's 2 calls a month, that's 6 calls a quarter. Those calls take, let's say, 20 minutes. That's 2 hours. Now, that's a long time, but 2 hours spread out across 3 months, it's not that long.
So what are some of the things, because I agree with you and I do listen to some of our phone calls, what are some of the things that law firm owners can look out for on a phone call with a prospect that didn't end up hiring them? Because there's a couple of things that I am talking to law firm owners and people in like the legal space, so they kind of do understand this, but it's not like a regular service business where you call like a plumber and then they have to convince you that they're the right plumber for the job. Right. They sort of just have to answer and tell you like, oh, I can come and fix that. With a lawyer, they have to sort of convince you that they have a solution for a problem that you don't really understand the solution for. So there's like 3 things that can happen on the call. Is somebody calls you, you do a good job of explanation. You do a good job of explaining the process that they're about to take with your firm. You are empathetic. You understand their needs. We've done this before. Here's what it's going to look like. You got a DWI. It's a $10,000 retainer. I'm going to go to court. We're going to do this plea. Usually when this thing happens, and if you've told me the truth and I have all the evidence, it's going to be this, your license is suspended. You do community service. I don't know what the penalties are, truthfully, for a DWI. I know people who had DWIs and some of them have gone to jail. If I have to go back to court for a second time, it costs me X amount of time for a court appearance, right? And the person's like, yeah, great. Like, this sounds great. I like all your stuff. I like the way you handle it. You got my next court date, everything. They go with you. Same person calls up. They have, I don't know, it's like their 5th DUI, and you don't handle 5th DUIs, but you know somebody who does, or you don't know somebody who does, and you don't want to refer to anybody. And that case is not for you because it's a crazy case, right? I have no idea why.
5 DUIs, that guy's probably going to jail.
Maybe it's a vehicular homicide and you don't do that. Maybe you just do like simple DUIs. So you don't get that person. And maybe that person calls you and they are a good fit. They have a DUI. You do those DUIs, DWIs, whatever it is. And they decide not to hire you. What are some of the common things that happen on those phone calls with why people don't hire you?
One of my favorite parts of my job, I call it the CRM detective, is anytime something goes wrong or we're trying to figure out a problem or find a solution, figure out what's, a leak in our intake pipe or whatever it is. Nick and I often get together and we do, or like Sherlock Holmes for HubSpot, which is the CRM we use. We go in, we fish around, and we have the fields like reason for not opening, etc., that we can use like that. And there's common reasons. One of the reasons when you have someone on the phone who's interested in your services, like you said, it's not like a plumber. You don't have to convince them that you're the right guy for the job. You have to, well, you do, but you have to convince them that you've done this before, and that it's not going to cost them a ridiculous amount of money. People have outsized expectations of legal fees. Legal fees can be expensive. They're also pretty reasonable, especially if you consider that you don't hire a lawyer. Maybe your public defender does a good job or whatever. I don't know. You're going to pay a lot more in fines, fees, or jail time and at some places they charge you for staying in jail, right? Like in Florida, like it's a hotel. But the thing that you need to look for in those calls is a category. You listen to the call and the person says, I don't know, I've seen this other guy, he's got these reviews, and they say that, oh, this guy helped me out of my DWI. Right there, boom. You need more testimonials. You need more, because they're not believing it when it's coming out of your mouth. You need it to come out of one of your clients' mouths. If they say, I don't know, that seems really expensive, you need to educate them more on what it costs to get a DWI fixed, because you're not going to be on average more expensive than someone else. You need to educate them on the costs of not hiring a lawyer to handle your DWI, right? And those statistics are easy. If people who went with me, I've gotten X number of people on, a license suspension, as opposed to people who go to go with a public defender who end up with going to jail, 20% of the time or whatever it is. You have those numbers on hopefully you have those numbers on your successes, on your wins, and you need to play those up.
Yes. I think one of the things that some of the attorneys I know struggle with is this credibility factor where lawyers are academics. And a lot of academics that I know pride themselves on their education, like where they got their degree, how long they've been doing this sort of thing. Yeah. And I don't know that a person like me would necessarily be impressed by that. What I would be impressed by is relationships. And so I hired a lawyer for my speeding ticket. I've talked about this before. He uses our service. He is a friend of mine, and he's a very famous criminal defense lawyer. Why I asked him to do my traffic ticket, I don't even know. That must be insulting to him, but I think he does do traffic tickets. And anyway, so I call him up. I tell him what happened, and he's like, well, you're kind of screwed because the laws in this county where you got the ticket are different than the county where you live and got the ticket in, and they don't do they won't like waive it. Like you're going to get points on your license. But what I can do for you is because I know the judge and I know this and I can show up here, whatever, is he knocked off, I had to pay him more, but he knocked off more of like the fine. I got reduced points or something like that. And he was able to explain what he was going to do when he got to the actual courthouse. That made me feel like, oh, Tony's got it. His name is Tony. He didn't say like, oh, well, I went to Harvard and I've been doing this for 30 years. It's like, okay, cool. You could be bad at your job for 30 years. You know what I mean? I want to know that you know the ins and outs of how you're going to do this thing. Does that make sense?
That's especially, it's a cultural thing. I think that you're pointing to here where for a long time, experience was expertise. But with the advent of the internet, people can look up the process of whatever it is, and they're probably going to get misinformation. But the point is that they feel like, okay, you've done this for 30 years. What if it's changed? What if you weren't good at it? There used to be a culture of, this is going to sound crazy, of like respect for experience, for your elders, etc. But the advent of the internet has made it so that anybody can be an expert in anything. And what you need to prove on that phone call, especially with a younger generation is not, oh, well, here are my credentials. I did this for at this many years. It's, what have you done for me lately? Who are the people that you've helped lately, who can testify to your skills? Or you could say, yeah, just last year I had a case just like yours. I got him on X. He got this many points on his license. He got a suspension, whatever. But he didn't go to jail. You know what I mean? And there's experience that you can point to, but without getting political, the current, let's say, on any side of any sort of political debate that you're on, many people in the younger generation always feel like the older people are not doing enough for them. And they point to, well, I've been in office for 40 years. And sometimes when you say that to someone, their first thought is, well, why didn't you retire already? You know what I mean? And so what you need to be able to point to is recent successes. And especially if you can point to someone like them who had a case like theirs, who was willing to leave a review on your website, do some sort of testimonial video. Those are so successful because it's not just lawyers. Everybody knows that when you are calling a business, they're trying to get your money. That's the transaction. Yes, they're trying to help you, but there's always a monetary incentive. But the person who you helped, the testimonial, there's no monetary incentive there that they can see. They see someone who liked the job you did for them and therefore want to hear more about it.
I would like to point out for all you trolls and meme lords out there that we are not suggesting that attorneys make any guarantees of past successes being what you will get in your current service with them. It does point to expertise that you say, I have handled cases exactly like this. This was the outcome. I'm not saying that I can do that for you. I'm saying we can go, it's a criminal charge DUI. I can go to the prosecution and try to get a plea deal because that's usually how they handle this in this sort of circumstance, especially if it was, I don't know, you were just sleeping on the side of the road, but you were intoxicated. I don't know. I don't know the circumstances. God willing, I never get arrested for a DWI. Okay.
Well, yes, absolutely. But my point is that that what you're pointing to is not a promise of a result. It's your case is not exceptional, is what you're telling this person. Your case is normal to me. I've handled cases like it before, because the nightmare scenario of any kind of legal problem is what they see on TV, a trial that takes months and all sorts of stuff like that. All you need to reassure that person is that they're not, it sounds crazy, they're not special. You know what I mean? They need to seem special to your business, but their legal issue shouldn't. Because if you say, well, now I've never heard of that before, that person's never hiring you.
There is a concept in recovery, of which I am a member, called terminal uniqueness. And a lot of people like to know that they are not terminally unique. Everybody likes to feel special. And I want to be made to feel special as your client. I want you to take good care of me because I'm a special boy. But no, I'm not terminally unique. That this case is not so astronomical that you can't help me. That you're like,
you
no,
don't want your
this
problems
is, I do
to seem unique. You know what I mean? You want your strengths to be unique and your weaknesses to be common, because then they can be fixed. And, if we bring it back to, as we started with self-evaluation, everyone wants to feel like they're special. We rated ourselves, if you average our ratings out, we're great podcast hosts.
We're handsome.
Yeah,
we're funny.
Above average. Nick rated himself below average on hosting ability, but it still averages out to 10, 7, 4. That's what, a 7.5. So
egotistically, I think that being a 4 co-host makes me a funnier podcaster.
See?
But anyway,
people like to think of themselves as exceptional, but they don't want to think that their problems are exceptional. And that is what your expertise has to convince them, is that their problems are not exceptional.
So I know we referenced, and listen, I'm doing the plug again. We're plugging. I know we referenced Answering Legal a few times during today's episode. So I just want to let our listeners know that they can head over to answeringlegal.com to learn more about our virtual receptionist service. There's also a link in the bio of this episode and every other episode that you watch of this show to get started with a 400-minute free trial of our service.
Well done on the plug, Nick. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you'd like to join us for the next episode of Legal Intake Experts, please do. All episodes of this show can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the Answering Legal YouTube channel.
We'll see you next time, everyone.